Welcome to the All Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Steve Inman. I'm joined, as always, by star producer and co-host Chris Brito. The trade deadline is 3 weeks away, and we'll talk about the first notable trade of the 2023 season. Plus, what should the Clippers and Knicks do? We're also going to make our picks, actually, for the worst contract in the NBA right now. Before we get to all that, Chris, my friend, how are you?
Hey, Stevie. Happy to be here on the All Hoops podcast once again. We have a lot to cover, but I think the trade this week um with the Lakers and and the Wizards. Thank you. I feel like a lot of the conversation this year has been so far about why the Lakers haven't been using their picks, haven't been really being aggressive and toward like improving this roster. But they finally made a trade. They acquired Rui Hachimura from the Wizards. They're like trading partners from like the last few trades they've made. First off, I want to get your reaction to it. Do you think it really helps the team in a way that makes them competitive enough to make the play-in? And do you think they re-signed him afterward?
Yeah, I mean, those are great questions. I think talent-wise, it makes a lot of sense. You're giving up 3 bad second-round picks and Kendrick Nunn, who wasn't really helping you much, for an interesting guy who won the top 10 in the lottery a few years ago. I think it makes a lot of sense on paper. Talent-wise, they just need help, and they could try to figure out the fit later. Having said that, it's not the best fit. I mean, what is he really? He's kind of similar to Kyle Kuzma when he was in LA, who really split his time between the 3 and the 4. Well, that's where LeBron and AD play, who is back, by the way, AD. And so I'm not really sure how he fits in. People around there are kind of saying, oh, well, LeBron will just play more shooting guard. LeBron will just, be more on the perimeter. Like, will he, though? Like, I don't know. I think it's worth the gamble. It's worth trying. Again, he's a talented guy, and if it works out, you can extend him on probably around 4 years and like 16, 17 million a year. You could probably get him for in restricted free agency. And if it doesn't work out, you just don't send him a qualifying offer and you let him walk. So I think it makes sense. I just don't know if it's really going to make a difference in the standings and be a difference in them getting more than, say, a 10 or 11 seed.
I me in my opinion, I don't know if this really makes a difference because as you were noting, it doesn't really make sense in terms of how that team is structured. The one counterpoint to my own argument is that this Lakers team needs talent and desperately.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that is probably more paramount than whether he fits or not. If he's talented and he can play basketball, those are the people that should be playing on this team right now because frankly, the team is a shell of what a real NBA team probably should be, with the exception of LeBron and AD and some others. But is that really is it enough? No. Is it maybe puts the Lakers a little bit closer to a play-in? For sure. I just think whether they make it is kind of depends on whether they make a trade or not.
Yeah. So I think that's the question there. What happens from here? Do they make that trade with those 2 first round picks they have in 2027 and 2029, something we've talked about at length, and everyone around the NBA community has talked about at length? Or do they kind of hold pat and say, well, there's no difference making superstar available. We're not going to waste those picks.
Or are you asking me?
Yeah.
I think it's really contingent on whether the Lakers want to use any of those first round picks. Like, there's a case to be made that they should go after the guys that they were going after over the offseason. But are the Lakers going to do it? And I think evidence has shown that they are willing to move on from LeBron, which is what I think is unsaid, but sort of like the underlying theme here with the Lakers, because they're not doing the moves they should be doing if they are serious about making a run.
Yeah. I mean, LeBron is really creeping up on the all-time scoring list. I think he's around 260 points away from that record now. With the way he's going, that's less than 10 games. And people keep saying, oh, well, like, why did LeBron sign this extension? He now can't be traded. There is no chance the Lakers were ever going to let him do this all-time scoring record in a uniform that wasn't a Laker uniform. There was no way that was happening. So this idea that like, oh, like LeBron like lost control of what he's doing this year. They were not trading him. It was not happening. LeBron could be, doing a George Costanza trying to get himself kicked off the team. It was never going to happen. He was always going to finish this record as a Laker, and we'll see where it goes this summer. But I think it's a good start, and I'm not really sure where they go from here. I think what they're looking for is they're eyeing the Chicago Bulls, and they're going to say, hey, if Chicago decides being a 500 team doesn't really do anything for us, does Zach LaVine become available? Does DeMar DeRozan become available? Could we trade those 2 picks for one of those guys? Is that enough for the Bulls? Is that enough for the Lakers? I think that's kind of where, to me, is the most interesting part of this trade deadline is what do those 2 teams do? Because it really impacts everybody else for one, and it also really determines LeBron's future.
Quite frankly, if you get DeMar DeRozan on this team, this team automatically becomes like a mid-tier team in the West. DeMar DeRozan is so great. He's going back. He'd go back home.
He'd be I think it's the same thing with Rui, with him. And obviously he's a way better player than Rui. But they need shooting and they need defense. That's the 2 things they need. And DeRozan is an elite 2-point shot maker who is also a great passer, right? He can rebound, he can do all these things. He's a great player. He's going to make a lot of teams better, but what is he on this team? The fit to me doesn't make sense, and I think they would struggle with it for 20 games, and then the season would end. And then we'd be talking about, does LeBron give this another chance? Does he sign another 1-year extension? And to me, it sounds very similar to what we heard with Russell Westbrook. Obviously, he's a much better player than Russell Westbrook, but that's how I see that one playing out. Whereas I don't really know what they should do. I don't. They've just put themselves in such a hole with that Westbrook trade that I think what they should do is just try to use one of those picks and go out and can they go get Hield and Turner with one of those picks and say, okay, we got 2 more shooters. We got a guy who could protect the rim in Turner. AD can play more of the 4, which is what he wants to do, and see where they go from there. I think that's the better fit than trading both picks for a DeRozan or a LaVine, even though those guys, again, are much better players.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that. I think that probably makes the most sense. The reason why I like DeMar so much is because he can handle some of the ball handling duties that LeBron has right now, and I think it's a way that we can extend him a bit, his career a bit. But yeah, I mean, I like your suggestions. I think that's probably where I would go. I would just love for DeMar to get like a sort of a swan song of sorts, and I think that'd be nice. But
love to see him in contention somewhere.
Sure.
It's interesting, like where's the right fit for DeMar, where I don't really know what that team is. I do agree though, like get him off the Bulls, put him on a contender. Let's get going. I mean, is Sacramento real?
Sacramento is a good spot, I think.
Can you do Barnes and a first, Barnes and 2 firsts for?
I would do it
for DeRozan.
I would do it for DeMar.
That might make the Kings legit, and you can go into the playoffs with Fox, Sabonis, DeMar. You still have Keegan Murray there, who's really picking up his play. I like that more than anything. And all of a sudden, and you have that whole community like the Beam and that diehard fan base who doesn't get enough credit for how amazing they are. That would be a fun place to go. I don't know if the Bulls are going to sell. We want to see these big trades. We want to see movement, but sometimes teams are just happy being 500.
and I think the Kings are obviously building something there. Who knows if it's for real? I think right now that team needs to just focus on is like, definitely making Fox happy, Sabonis happy, and just building around those guys. I think they need to like supercharge their rebuild by getting DeMar? I don't think it's necessary yet, but I mean, we'll see. We'll see. And
we'll see.
We'll see.
I agree with you. When I said some teams are just happy being 500, I meant more the Bulls, not the Kings.
Oh yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I don't really know if there's a better fit for DeMar than there. Obviously, anybody goes to Miami, they thrive, but I'm not really sure what they can offer in a trade. So we'll see. The trade deadline is going to be interesting. I'm not sure we're going to get a ton of big moves, but there's a ton of teams that could make big moves, and that includes our next team, the Los Angeles Clippers. And Chris, we've done the show now for 6 years, and I don't think I've ever been more wrong about a team than this Clipper team, where I've been saying they were my preseason pick to win it all, and I don't see it anymore. I don't know what's happened, but basically, we don't really know Kawhi's status for the fourth straight year. They're only 26 and 24. Paul George has missed a lot of time again, and the rest of the team is kind of decent role players that really fit in with a healthy Kawhi and George. But for the most part, those guys are just never healthy, and they're never healthy at the same time. I'm wondering what they should do.
Well, we had a really long talk about this before the podcast, and the Clippers are sort of a make or break year.
Yeah.
I think for the benefit of the Clippers franchise and the benefit of, this sort of like waiting on Kawhi the savior to save them is I think the act is getting kind of old. We can make many arguments as to what's the worst contract in the NBA was. Like I remember before the season started, we listed Levine and Julius Randle as the worst. I actually think Kawhi's might be the worst. I mean, as talented as of a player he is, I think having a player who you're never sure if he's going to suit up for a whole week and the instability that causes and inability for that to like sort of create or build or grow from like their past like previous successes like hurts the team in the long run. And we're seeing it right now. Like I think this is a make or break year because let this year be the year that like, okay, we're gonna go all in, we're gonna figure it out. And if it doesn't, I think they should move on from Kawhi. I don't know how they would, but I think they should. I think it's not fair to the fans. I don't think it's fair for the rest of the team. Tyronn Lue is a good coach. And I think to a certain level, like part of being an NBA player, a starter or a star, whatever, is showing up. And we can have all the complaints against Julius Randle because he definitely deserves them. But he shows up, and I think that's something really admirable. And he hasn't missed a game all season. He's been our Iron Man for the squad the last few years. And I think that should be commended. I don't think that like just because you're talented, and he might be injured. I'm not saying he's not. I'm just saying that like
he is injured, but
right, he is injured. I'm just saying like the unreliableness of having him wears a team down, I think.
yeah, I think you brought up some great points. And just to reiterate what the contract was, because when you said this before the show, like, oh, by the way, he might have the worst contract in the NBA. I'm like, wait, that can't be right. And you go look at the contract, and it's $42.5 million this year, $45.5 million next year, and then a $49 million player option for 2025. It's a lot of money, Chris, for a guy who you can make the case is never going to play 60 games in a season again. This is year, what is this, year 3, 4 in, this is year 4 for him in LA, right? So the first year, 57 games. The second year, 52 games. Third year, didn't play at all, ACL. And then the fourth year so far, 25 games of the teams, he's played about 55% of their games.
Yeah.
It's a major problem, Chris. Over those 3.5 years, he's basically averaging about 33, 34 games a year. And I think the other frustration is they don't really know when he's going to play. This is not it started with the whole, we're going to rest him. We're ahead of the curve in the NBA. We don't take the regular season seriously. But then all of a sudden it became, well, we don't really know when he's playing in the playoffs. We don't really know how to build a team around him when we can't know when he's going to play. And it was one thing when the team was on board, but now it seems like the team's not on board. It seems like the team does not have any idea who's going to be in their lineup, including him and Paul George, on a day-to-day basis. And I don't see how they turn this thing around. And you mentioned like I don't think anyone's taking that contract right now. And if you are, you're taking it for a Russell Westbrook like bad contract itself, which is not going to make you any better. And by the way, Oklahoma City owns all your draft picks that are unprotected for the next, 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. And just to finish off with this topic too about our boy Kawhi. Okay, you're resting during the season for you to play in the playoffs. Okay. Y'all didn't show up in the last playoffs. Yeah, you made it to the Western Conference Finals, but mostly because of Paul George. Like on
That
some
was
level,
2 years
like
ago now. It seems like it was just yesterday. That was 2 years ago now.
you're
That
right,
was
two years
Suns. That
ago.
was the Suns.
That's two
Yeah.
years ago. And like on some level, like, okay, fine. You don't play the regular season, but you're also not playing the playoffs. And like injuries are unfortunate. I'm not saying they're not, but I think it's not unreasonable to be frustrated with the whole process, which is
Yeah.
ultimately like why like that I think is the worst contract in the NBA.
Very well said. To wrap this up, is there anything they can do? Is there anything they should do? Should they try to go out and get a Fred Van Vliet at point guard? Is there a smaller upgrade they can try to make to try to stabilize this thing, or does it really just come down to Kawhi and Paul George health?
Well, I think they should definitely like go all in this year. So if Fred Van Vliet is part of that equation, go for it. But like put all your eggs in this basket because the year to get the West is this year. Luka's probably still a year or two away from even competing for a championship. The Warriors are on the mend. Your biggest threat are the Nuggets, who haven't shown they can win with a big man. The Suns look like they're decaying really fast. And I think that if you're going to do it, you're going to do it this year. The Lakers are nowhere to be seen. Like this is the year to do it if you're a team that like isn't sure about what your future looks like, this is the year to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Van Vliet's going to cost an arm and a leg. It's probably a first round pick. Uh, he hasn't been good in about a year. He's shooting 38% from the floor this year, Chris. And
Except when he plays the
I,
Knicks.
of course, when that whole Raptor team looks incredible when they play the Knicks. All I see on Twitter is, oh, people know how to play. Spicy P does the same spin move every time. The Knicks can't figure it out. Like they've lost to them 3 times out of 4 this year.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating there. But you back to Van Vliet. I think he can help this Clipper team. I think he's got to be kind of one of the main scorers in Toronto. I think if he had to take he goes from 16 shots a game to say 12. I think his shooting might go up a little bit. And again, it really just comes down to, will Paul George be healthy? Will Kawhi be healthy? Can Fred Van Vliet be the third option on this team and not the second, first option most nights? And hopefully you get those guys back for the playoffs. I don't know what they do, Chris, because without the draft picks, they don't really have a lot of options. They really just have to go for it and hope those guys are ready to go. And after 4 years of this, I'm not sure they will be.
Yeah, I don't think they will be either. But let's.
All right.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say, believe it or not, we have a team with the same record, the New York Knicks, 26-23. They are coming off a heroic win over the Cleveland Cavaliers, and there's speculation of what they should do at the deadline. We've heard Quickly is available for a first. Oh, wait, no, actually, Quickly is playing well. Let's not trade him for a late first. And now it's, can we dump Rose and Fournier? But we're not going to give you up any assets to do that, so we really can't do those. Maybe they talk about trading Hardenstein back to the Clippers for nothing. He really hasn't fit in here. Chris, are they going to do anything?
The question is whether we want them to do anything. And I think for me, I would want them to go after somebody like a Jay Crowder, someone like a Caruso. I think if you're not committing to the youth movement, you have to commit. Well, I guess in the Knicks' minds, you're committing to a dual movement. I think that the Knicks should be, if they're going to prioritize anybody, be someone like Caruso, someone like Crowder. But I have to tip my hat to Tibbs because he's done a great job with Quickly, who has become a defensive menace for us by partly out of necessity, but also Quickly has shown a lot of great instincts. I don't think someone like Caruso will necessarily take his minutes, but I think having another perimeter defender will help our team in the long run. I think a lot of the times where we have trouble is where like after Grimes and after Quickly, we don't have much to throw at defenders. And I think having a veteran guy helps. If we're gonna make the play, if we're gonna be in the playoffs and we're gonna make a run, I think we need a guy like that. It remains to be seen whether we do anything with these picks, because I feel like on one end we're sort of like collecting these picks but not really doing much, and like we're waiting on something, but what are we waiting for?
Yeah, no, I get it. They're stockpiling picks and they're kind of trying to hope they can use those picks in a swap for a guy like Donovan Mitchell. And it seems like they kind of missed that window. And the way the NBA works is those guys become available every 18 months or so, but you never know exactly when. And until that happens, the Knicks are going to be kind of in no man's land, just kind of waiting for the next guy. But as you say, Quigley's been good. He's shooting the ball a little better. He's, his passing has gotten a little better, and defensively he's been great. And so I think because of his size at 6'3", you probably can't start him and Brunson together, but he's been a heck of a sixth man for this team. And I don't want to disrupt that. I don't want to disrupt him. I want Toppin to play more. I want Grimes to keep getting his minutes, and to bring in a Crowder or a Caruso or one of these guys, I think will really disrupt that. And I think it might make the team better. But at the same time, my goal is really, we've talked about this 10 million times, but my goal is to see what those guys are. That's the goal of this season.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And I do think on one end, I feel good enough about giving Quickly another contract, an extension, like a new contract for him to remain on the team. Obi, I'm still on the fence for it, only because it doesn't seem to me that Tibbs has figured out a role for him.
right.
And it's what, year 2 or year 3?
Year 3. Him and Quickly, same draft. So
Yeah.
they're both up to the contracts this summer. And those are going to be fascinating talks, because Quickly has shown big numbers in very limited starts. And the Knicks are going to try to pay him like a high-end role player. And he's going to try to get paid like a starting guard. And one's going to offer 10 million a year, and the other one's going to offer, ask for 19 to 20 million a year. And how those progress is going to be very fascinating. And that's why I really want to see him as much as I can before making that decision, because that's a big gap. And I don't know how they're going to make it work unless they're confident that he's the guy that they're trying to pay him like it is.
The one, I guess, redeeming factor that the Knicks have is that he's a combo guard, and I feel like you can find combo guards in the draft. And I think that's secretly what the Knicks are banking on, but not many combo guards can play defense the way he has. He has a lot of great instincts, and I think I'm paying the money for that reason. I'm not paying the money for like the scoring aspect, which he's getting better at, by the way. But
yeah, no, he's been better. One guy I would like on the Knicks, but I think this is more of an offseason thing, is Josh Hart. I think he's a guy in Portland who, that Blazer team's not going anywhere, but they're not selling because they don't want to upset Damian Lillard. But at the same time, he's a guy who could be a free agent this summer. And I think he's kind of more of a polished version of Quentin Grimes. And those kind of guys, the Knicks could use another wing who could shoot. I know his shooting is down a little bit this year. He's not really attempting as many threes as he did in years past. But at the same time, I think Hart's a guy who really could fit in here well, play multiple positions, really help Grimes along, probably could help Barrett along too. And that's a guy I would try to go after in the offseason. But for now, I want to be status quo. Maybe you go deal Cam Reddish for 2 seconds if you can. I don't even know if you can get that at this point. I mean, just kind of where this group is at in over the summer.
Well, your idea actually makes a lot of sense, because he's also a Villanova guy. So
those guys know how to play. I mean, we hate him as St. John's guys, but those guys always are ready to play.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, let's get to our final thoughts right after this. All right, Chris, final thoughts time here. We talked about this morning, and you kind of just thought I was crazy, but I'm going to say it again. Ben Simmons is done. He's done as a premier player in this league. I watched him the other day. He had 0 points against the Celtics. 9 rebounds, 13 assists. He didn't attempt a free throw. He's this. It's over. He's a high end role player now who gets paid on a max deal, and that's to me the worst contract in the NBA. And I get it. He's young. He's only 26. He'll be 27 in July, but this is not the first year we've seen him kind of, I don't want to shoot. I don't want to play anymore. He's making 35 million this year, 38 million next year, over 40 million in 2025. And Chris, for a team that really could use a third star, I think they're going to just go into the playoffs saying we just didn't have enough firepower. If we just had, a guy who could put up 15 points a game and play good defense, which is what they thought they were getting from Simmons, I think they could win a championship, and I think he's going to hold them back.
Yeah, and I think we tend to do these pre talks before we get on the show, and the thing with Ben Simmons is that you don't really feel good about having him in your starting lineup when you're closing a game. He's going to be the easiest person to pick out of that bunch, and whoever's defending Simmons could always just crowd the ball handler or whoever else that's a threat on the team. And so I don't necessarily think he's done probably as a star player, but he's still a serviceable player. He's still a guy that you would pick over a lot of others. But when you're in the NBA and you're afraid to shoot, and the game is about putting a ball in the bucket, it's an issue. That being said, he impacts the game in different ways, and I think that Ben Simmons, if you're listening to this, he's still a player that can make a difference in those other ways. Like, he's not going to be the guy you're scoring anyway. And ultimately, he's not going to be an issue unless the Nets don't make it deep enough in the playoffs. And I think that's really what it's all about.
I think that's 100% right. I don't think they will at this point.
If KD, Kyrie, win a championship or even reach the finals, I think for them, Eastern Conference Finals is probably the goal. But if they make it with Ben Simmons on the roster, I don't think there'll be that much of an uproar internally about it. But
I agree. I agree with that. I think that's 100% right. But I just don't see this team right now being better than Boston or Milwaukee or even probably Cleveland right now. And we'll see. It's sad to me because this guy was so good, and it looked like he was going to be great. Here's what he did as a 21-year-old, as a rookie. He had 16 a game.
Yeah.
And he attempted 12 shots a game. Okay. This year, he's averaging 7 points a game on 6 attempts a game. And his free throws is almost non-existent now. He doesn't really shoot. He's taking half the shots he took as rookie. And the minutes are the same. It's not like he's playing a lot less. It's a shame. And I think now it's 2 teams, it's 2 different years. I don't know if he's ever going to recover. So Chris, give me something positive we can end the show on, since I went all doom and gloom with Simmons. Put you on the spot.
I think one of the most promising aspects of at least this week is really the growth of the guys like IQ and Grimes on the roster. Seeing Grimes be more of a playmaker and seeing IQ being have his defensive intangibles are things that all right, these are things that I can be excited about, and things that okay, at least no matter what happens this season, we have that to build on. Also, the Pelicans are getting Ingram back. He was injured for a while.
Yeah.
I know the Pelicans were hitting on a little slide. And I think overall, I think you have to be really happy with how the NBA is going. I feel like anybody has a shot to win a championship.
Yeah.
Whereas
I think way more wide open than ever.
Where I think in years past, there's one team and that's it. So those are positives.
No, I like that. That's very good. And I've again, as being the Debbie Downer of the two of us, I'm always the one complaining that only 4 or 5 teams can win. We're gonna get the same
All-star
Cavs
stuff
Warriors in the
is great
finals.
too.
Yeah, so I think there's so many teams. There's probably a dozen teams that can win the NBA Finals this year, and I think I can't remember ever saying that before. So that's going to be awesome. We'll talk about championship odds in the future. That's going to do it for us here on the
Oh, wait,
Alphas
wait, wait.
podcast.
Steve,
But
bring up the All-Star, the new All-Star format. You were excited about that before the show.
the All-Star, oh yeah, the All-Star format where basically they're going to pick the last year when they picked the rosters on TNT with LeBron and Durant, it was must-watch TV. This with Durant and the Harden beef, and it was incredible. And now this year they're going to do it 30 minutes before the game. It's going to be even better. You're going to have guys who are upset about being picked last or second to last, trying to take it out on LeBron and KD in the game. It's going to be incredible. So great job by the NBA there. I can't wait. Next week, we will talk about our East and West All-Star rosters. Very excited to do that. Will a Nick get on those rosters? Will two Knicks get on those rosters? You'll have to wait and see.
Bye, everyone.